Welcome back to the Revamp Podcast today. Super excited. Have Mario Lancioni from the state of New Jersey, real estate investor. And glad to have you on, dude.
Same here, brother. Yeah, it was great to connect with you. I remember years ago, a mutual friend of ours, Dave, always said, I think you two think alike, talk alike, are crazy.
Yep.
Very similar.
And it's
we
funny
never
because
connected.
he said that same thing to me probably like 20 times. I'm like, Dave, it seems like you're trying to set me up on a date, man.
Yeah,
like,
he did. Yeah. And I had about 95,000 things going on, and I didn't understand the power of networking at the time. And, you know, when this was years ago too. So, and when he caught me about talking about you, I was kind of going through some things. So I'm like, you know what? I don't think this is the right time to talk to Drew, but it's good that we can connect now.
We connected, man.
Yeah.
We did it. So let's go back to the beginning of the journey and how you got into the wild world of real estate investing. And
wow. So it all started with being in corporate America. And I did corporate America for almost 10 years. And there was a period about 6 years in that my brother and I were going to leave and go to a competitor. And when we were going to leave to go to a competitor, we talked to the competition. They gave us an offer. And I talked to my brother. I said, why don't we go to an attorney and just make sure we're not doing anything incorrectly.
And what was it that you were doing?
We worked for WB Mason. It was we pushed pens and pencils. That's all we did. Yeah.
I love that.
So our cold calling was door to door, floor to floor. We'd walk in and pitch the receptionist on why they should have used us over Staples.
Got it.
Very easy from a sales standpoint, easy because the competition was pretty much virtual. Staples only did website. Amazon wasn't around. So we were the only ones who really walked in and pitched people. So it was easy to extract business.
Love it.
And we had about $7 million total together of gross sales per year. And when you're in corporate America, you don't realize the power of what you're bringing in versus your profit versus the back end dollars you're getting from like Hewlett Packard and all these big players. And when we brought the attorney in, he was a friend of my physician friend. We talked to him about it. He sat with us at a country club and he said, what are your numbers? He's like, all right, you're doing $7 million together. What do you think your GP is, like your gross profit? And I said, we're hovering around like 20%. He's like, well, based on what you're bringing in, you should easily be able to negotiate X salary. And he's like, what I would suggest is going to them and pitching them on 8 different things that you need to stay. You want your cell phone paid, you want your student loans paid, you want a sign up or retention bonus, blah, 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 blah. And he was a wealth of knowledge. I'm like, if we didn't pay this guy like $2,000, we wouldn't even know how to negotiate with the guy.
Yeah.
I was very green, so I didn't know how to negotiate at that level. And so we have a meeting, which is prototypical in New Jersey, in a diner. So we meet the manager in Jersey in a diner. And it was interesting. Right before we went in, I'll never forget this phone call. The attorney called us. He was such a good dude. And he's like, hey, just be prepared that they probably already know that you're leaving the company. And there's going to be more than likely several guys there. And if they do have several guys there, position it where it's you and your brother versus one guy versus you and your brother versus 3 or 4. And that was a pretty cool tip that he gave us. So once I put the phone down, I said, hey, if we go in here, let's just be prepared on like what the layout could be, you know? And the layout was they were already in the back of the diner in a back booth, and there was 3 of them sitting back there. And what we said is, hey, we don't feel comfortable talking to everybody. We just feel comfortable talking to our direct manager. And the other 2 guys left, and they sat in the Range Rover, the one guy had. Because he was like the master negotiator out of Boston that you didn't want to mess with. Like if you had to get...
So you were able to get him out.
Thank God, because he would have crippled us, this guy. So basically we sat down, we went through all the terms and conditions we want, and they really kicked out 2 things. They didn't argue about the salary, X, Y, Z, and they did a 5-year agreement, and they kept us. So by us thinking about leaving, we stayed. But the next step was pretty important, and this was what got us into real estate, was the attorney, after he said, congratulations, it's great, they want to fire you as quickly as possible, and you need a plan B, because you might get fired before year 5, and all the money that you're making now, you need to put it somewhere, and I would suggest you looking at like real estate. And I didn't really know much besides my mom was a tenant her whole life. And I always thought landlords made a lot of money, and let me get into real estate. So I wound up buying a duplex at the top of the market, and it just cash flowed. So that was my first experience. And I was like, you know what? The smartest play would be getting something that was clean and I could learn how to be a landlord first and then start the rest of my way, my journey would understanding like construction and XYZ. Similar to you, I'm sure, after getting one, it was like a shot of like an addiction of like growing. I'm like, all right, now I'm in it. I got to do a shit ton.
Yep.
Started going crazy, having like 3 or 4 agents help me find properties, and got another duplex. And after getting the second duplex, I started finding websites like HUDhomestore.gov. And that was a massive, massive way that I scaled my portfolio, because HUDhomestore.gov back then, you could get properties for like pretty much pennies on the dollar. The house, like the government would go in and actually do the renovation. They put new windows in, they do some plumbing work. If you've seen them, they were great deals. And you didn't need wholesalers, and I didn't know what a wholesaler was to capture deals. I was getting deals on HomePath, and what was another one? Hubzu was good back then.
Okay.
Pre-pandemic stuff.
Yep. So what year was this that you bought like that first duplex?
That was, I'd say 2017, around 2017. And within like in about a year and a half clip, it was aggressive because I started bringing in my buddies to be partners with me, which if I go back, it was incorrect the way I structured a lot of our partnerships, because I did a lot of sweat equity. They didn't really know about the business and they were very hands off. So the equity part didn't make sense in the cash flow.
Got it.
But to go backwards to where I was at, just scaled massively, had about like, I'd say 40 rentals at that point, and felt pretty comfortable to leave.
How did you get up to 40?
Because I had a lender that was Visio Financial out of Texas, I believe. We had a great system with him where there was no seasoning period back then. I believe the rates were around 6%. So what we had was we would go into the property, and our contractor, we would give him a flat budget. We're like, all right, the after repair value, let's say it's 150. We would get a term sheet from the lender right away. The lender said, you're going to get $90,000 net back. If I was buying it at 40, I would tell the contractor, hey, the most I could spend is like $40,000 on this deal.
Got it.
So I knew that I had like a $10,000 buffer on the deal. So I always did a term sheet in the beginning to see if it cash flowed and made sense. A lot of times they didn't cash flow. I was just more of like, let me scale, let me just get these deals in and just rinse and repeat. And I didn't know what the burst strategy was. It was just a matter of like competing and doing it as fast as humanly possible. So that was the approach to get me to a place where I was confident enough to leave corporate America. Because I was still printing out HUD documents and shit while I was in the office doing sales.
Yep.
As I was doing the two. So there was a lot going on for that.
So are you saying you got to 40 before you even left?
40 before I even left.
Wow.
But I don't even,
and
I
that
would
was
tell
in a
you,
year and a half.
But the cash flow, I don't even know what I cash flowed, to be honest with you. I probably was
When you're
maybe cash flow
acquiring that much,
couple.
probably not much.
Not much, no.
Yeah, if
You know,
anything.
what I saw was I was able to take a little bit off the top with the refinances, and it was tax-free dollars. And I'm like, you know what? I could live off of this because I know the game. I knew how to pull the money, and I'm like, at the end of the day, I might be able to make more doing money tax-free than getting taxed on what I was getting paid.
Fully understand.
And that was just the thought process behind the method behind the madness. There was definitely this huge ego trip I went through in that period because I thought I knew everything about real estate. You know, you just think you know it
40
all.
40 in a year and a half. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's
Thought
huge.
I knew it all.
Yep.
Then I had a construction company. I just didn't know systems, onboarding, hiring the right people in the right seats. So I just basically had a buddy of mine and had a contractor that had a golden tongue that sold me a bill of goods that he knew everything. Had the right team. We had about 15 guys that were on payroll. So my payroll was astronomical. And my sole purpose was just to go vet out, get other investor buddies of mine to do their renovations, get retail jobs. Through me. And we did so much in 5 months. It was ridiculous. The amount of customers we took on, it was pretty easy, but on the backside of it was a disaster. It was a fucking disaster. Because no jobs were getting done and whatever. And that's where Dave actually came in and helped me out on some jobs. Because I took on a triplex of my buddies in Manayunk. And during this whole COVID time, the operation shut down, and it made me look at all right, where is everything at? Where are these projects at? So my wife and I went in every single project, and we saw all right, they're not at the end of the job like they're saying. It's like kind of like a quarter of the way done or half of the way done.
Yeah.
And we only have a certain budget. And we're like, we have to bootstrap this bitch, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Been there.
Yeah. And I know Dave could sense it because he would come to the projects and he was like, first off, he gave me a lot of good tips about like my guys. He's like, dude, I'm not trying to step on your, Dave is, I don't want to step on your toes, but I want to point out some of these things. And he gave me some good insight where I had to think about it. I'm like, all right, these guys were definitely not holding their weight. And he helped get me through this Manioc deal that I did for a buddy of mine. And I probably lost a bunch of money on it, but he did help me just get it finished because I didn't know Philly and how to do all the construction there. You know,
It's a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. And so that got done. I was able to just steamroll through a lot of these renovations and these houses. And it allowed me to really just get to a point where I'm like, where's my debt at this point? So I got to a point where I had debt. I think it was about, if I put a number on it, probably about $500,000 in debt.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we did was we sold off a portion of our properties and we basically started wholesaling probably 2020, end of 2022.
Okay.
2021-ish, around that time. So that was like the whole landscape of me getting into real estate and doing that whole part there. But there was a lot of, I would say, trauma involved in it because, you know, you're kind of at the top of the mountain, you get clipped down, and you're like, dude, what do I know this business? That was some things that were going on because you actually just overextended yourself.
Yeah. I fully understand. And I appreciate you even having the balls to talk about it openly because everybody goes through that to some degree that actually strives to be the greatest at anything.
Yeah.
Right? It's like everybody at some point gets slapped and, you know, gets kicked while you're down too. And to be able to keep going and keep doing stuff, that's a real testament to character and grit. And that's, in my opinion, that's the real measure of a man, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not how you can be incredibly successful in year one, though that's impressive.
Yeah.
What's really impressive is getting kicked in the teeth and then still going, you know?
Yeah. So I saw that too. I guess, you know, it's easy when everything's easy, and it was super easy then. And I saw that there's a lot of pivoting along the way pre-COVID or post-COVID, because even to this day, there's a ton of things that are changing by the month, every day. And then it was really gushy. It was easy to do the business. It was very, very easy. And, you know, so I guess the other part of it was there was just a lack of, I didn't know about, you know, that now we have great access to just social media of people that actually are experts in the business, mentors, masterminds. That helped straighten my head out of like not feeling alone, not feeling like the only guy who blew it up and screwed it up, and getting through those things. Because you're at first you're hesitant to speak about it, and then when you hear enough guys that are doing 10x what you're doing 100x, they've all been through it. You're like, all right, I feel okay. I'm not alone. You know.
Fully understand.
Yeah.
So through the construction company, how many years was it that you were operating that company?
It wasn't even a year. We didn't even make it 6 months. Okay. It was such a, I mean, it blew up that quickly because of the open jobs we had, the lack of experience, and the payroll. Those were like three major components that were going on in that short window of time. And I had never had construction experience, so I was just really banking.
So what made you drawn to that in the first place then?
So I had this big idea that, because I saw all the jobs that we were doing, and we were doing a ton of fix and flips. I'm like, I can have more control.
It was your own need to begin with, right?
To control the process. I thought I would actually have an economy of scale by spreading these guys out. Just a thought, not any strategy, a thought, like having 2 guys of property, 3 guys of property. If I did the math, I'm like, based on the payroll, everything's going to work out perfectly. So that was the second thought process of it, bringing it in-house. And then the third piece I thought was revolutionary in my mind was all these fix and flips that I'm doing, I'm going to carve out a percentage to pay out all the contractors to make them more motivated to work faster and harder. And I pitched it to them. I mean, we would have meetups, and I talked to them at nighttime and the whole gamut. So they were excited about it, but the excitement only lasted for like 2
An
weeks.
hour?
Yeah,
Yeah.
an hour. Yeah. But those were like my thoughts of how excited I was about doing the construction side of it, and seeing the benefit for all parties involved. And it just didn't work out. And I wish I actually had someone that I should have seeked out a contractor to say, hey, do you think this makes sense? And they probably were like, dude, you're crazy. Don't even get into the business. So buying the trucks and getting everything equipped was a big expense and a big learning expense. So it set me back. It did set me back a little bit because getting yourself out of a hole was a big enough task. It was a big one.
Yeah, man.
that.
$500,000 in the hole is that's a big it's a big thing to crawl out of.
Yeah.
But you got to do it anyway.
You got to do what you got to do.
Got to do it.
Yeah,
So,
you got to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so that brings you to the world of wholesaling after that?
It does. It allowed me to think of what I was doing at a longer time and shorten the time window. Because when I did fix and flips, I was like one of these maniac fix and flippers too. We did so many fix and flips. And when I did the numbers based on my payroll and everything, I mean, we were probably making, sometimes losing money, sometimes making 10 grand, sometimes making 20 grand. There was no rhyme or reason what we were making. It made no sense trying to do everything in-house or even fix and flip. And also we were doing just these extravagant, like if you looked at my timeline on social media, I mean, I was doing shit that were like unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the material costs and stuff made no sense. And so basically wholesaling made more sense to me as my brother educated me on it, and just hiring a mentor of being able to turn over paper and just selling it to another investor like yourself, and even just making 10 grand. Because like the headache
And
of
the cash
getting
conversion cycle, right?
Yep. And I didn't understand that. You know, I think lacking any business acumen in my life. I mean, I didn't grow up with any of that. So like having the reverse engineering, understanding these things of like the cash conversion cycle and having cash on hand and not overextending yourself. I'm learning it on the fly, you know, because I was a corporate guy. So everything of that was handled by them, and you're learning it as an owner.
Fully understand, man. Like it's no joke. I mean, even just trying to wrap my head around that and think through construction company with 15 employees. Like I had a construction company. We had 3 guys in-house, and like most of the other things we subbed out. And still our payroll was crazy, man. It's like, because we had the workers' comp and all that stuff. And it's crazy. In your first year or two as a construction company, I think we were paying, I think it was 60 cents on every dollar worth of salary went to workers' comp. So, you know, it's like we're paying whatever it was, $200,000 in salary. It's like, well, yeah, we're paying, I'm terrible at math, $150,000 in workers' comp, man. Like it's no joke.
Yeah, there was a picture we took with our team, and it was, we were way too big. I mean, we were way too big. It was because like I said, we had a period of thinking, all right, let's put 3 guys per property. If we're doing 5 or 6 flips a month, we can have them dedicated to this. We had certain guys that were like master carpenters that could do retail, so we sent them that way.
Got it.
And there was like there was a lot of theory and thoughts, but none of it actually made sense or worked. That was the problem. So that was the part that was the constraint. So my wife really helped us look under the hood of the financials, and she's really just more of a numbers person. And she's like, all these numbers make sense, don't make any sense. Wholesaling is a lot more cheaper to get involved in, and at least you can test it out, and it's not a huge lift financially versus doing something like fix and flipping and construction. So that was something I did. When I did wholesaling, the first like 4 or 5 deals, I spent 0 money on marketing. I got a lead from a buddy that tagged me on Facebook, and it was just ironic. You know, I put things in the universe. My brother starts talking to me about it, and the next thing I know, in a week, some guy tags me in a property that a lady wants to sell in Pennsgrove, New Jersey. And I went to the property, and just knowing numbers, I just negotiated the lady less like enough where
you wanted to buy at.
And I could just put like $6 grand on it.
Yep.
I made $6,000. Like that was pretty quick and easy and painless. Next one was I was picking up rent at a property. Next door there was a dumpster. Knocked on the door. The person was just moving their stuff out and moving. That was another free lead, you know.
Love it.
And it was just a lot of these little weird scenarios. I had a roofer that gave me a lead to another person, and I'm like, this is actually interesting without paying for marketing.
Yeah.
And then I started getting into like Mojo Dialer, and I was personally calling, like cold calling everybody, and I didn't know any better. Like I didn't know about texting and all this other crazy stuff back then. And we did a decent amount of deals through Mojo Dialer because nobody was really calling.
Absolutely.
Because the big wave was texting at that point. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if we tried texting, but for some reason we had more success cold calling. It felt like in that period. So we just did cold calling and it worked for a period of time, and then hired people, learned that process, never did it before. Had hired assistants, but never hired salespeople. And that's a whole nother situation.
It's a whole nother learning process, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So training people, teaching them, and sometimes you teach them so much, they feel that they're empowered to leave you, do it on your own. We were talking about this before. And, you just can't take it personal. That's what I learned after a period of time. I'm like, you know what? They leave you. What are you going to do? I think it's a matter of just being like a man and having a conversation with me more than just leaving. I think that's I have more respect.
Well, it's like offensive,
Yeah.
It's like, man, I invested time, effort, and energy into you, and you're just going to leave without saying anything? Like, come on,
Yeah.
I get it.
So that was it. And so the whole time, I mean, even to this day, it's a lot of learning and just communicating with guys. I'm always reaching out to guys that are high level, figuring out what's working, what's not working, and really seeing if I'm going crazy,
Yeah. No, I fully understand.
Yeah. Because it's an everyday changing thing, and I know like right now it's a summertime, a little more seasonal, so people are on vacation, so it's a little different.
Yep.
Working around now. So, but yeah, I did tried the big team thing. Didn't really like it personally. I started dreading going to the office because some guys, they have mood swings and other guys are motivated. And after a period of going through it, I'm like, I'd rather be lean, have a couple really good guys I can trust that they're with me, have a couple virtual people, and it's less, I guess I feel less pressure. I enjoy it, and it's not the burden of like a big bill down my back all the time.
Yep, I totally understand. And I tell a lot of guys that are like in that come up phase of whether it's their fix and flip company or their wholesale company, like I almost feel that it's a trap. Because I am also like, I love mentors. I love masterminds. Like I've always been a strong believer and strong proponent of it, right?
Yeah.
But the downside to that is being around guys that are 1, 2, or maybe even 10 steps ahead of you and looking at them and being like, well, I want to get to that level because that's the next step. And thinking that the next step means, I have to have a big team. I have to have a big office. I have to have a big payroll, right? Because that's what success is. But dude, I think that's a trap, and it's a mistake for a lot of people because that may not be the right step for you.
Yep.
And I know some guys that are like solopreneurs that are making a lot of money.
You're right.
It comes down to what you want.
There's a guy out of Miami my wife met, and she's doing an event with him, and it's interesting. He had 2 other partners, had a huge team office. He's like, dude, we were crushing it. He's downsized so much to having basically like 2 guys virtual, has a dispo person, has a transaction coordinator himself. He makes way more money. He does less volume, but he's the biggest player in Miami. And that's a hard market to be the biggest player in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he literally pounded in my head. He's like, do not think that bigger is better. He's like, I've done it all, Mario. I'm telling you, it's okay to be lean. He's like, because I'm telling you, I take it to the bank. And I see that, but sometimes you might be also getting sold a bill of goods that you have to be there, depending on who it is. And I think the more people I talk to, you're right. You could be a solo guy and crush it and do virtual markets and make it work.
It totally depends on what you want, what your goals and what your objectives are and everything.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
to
that point, what would you say your like goals and objectives are today? Like where are you going right now?
So what I do is, it's interesting. My sole focus is my wife's education business. What I've seen is it's a blue ocean for what she does. She is a Latina, and all her social media is in Spanish.
Okay.
And she does everything real estate related in Spanish, and she has crushed it online. It's unbelievable to see what she does. So I would say that I'm more of a CEO to her in her brand.
Okay.
I've told her several times she does meetups every month in Jersey City. She does free meetups. She's done a bunch of like webinars. She has her online courses, all that stuff. And she's brought in some of the biggest like players in the country to do a event in September in Newark. And it's just, it's an untapped market. I like to go in like untapped niche markets where I see that.
Absolutely.
And where we're at, it's super, super competitive.
Very.
Super. And what I also noticed with my wife, which is great, she's built so much trust up with them that we can also dispo our deals to her crowd. And that's been a huge component for us.
Got it.
Where she also handholds them through the process where we're going to make an assignment fee. She's very transparent with it. She'll even offer our contractors and then set them up with our lenders. And then at the end of the day, they're still going to see a profit. It may not be the profit of a big fix and flipper, but they're happy to say, I got an education, I made $10,000 versus the guy who needs to make $50,000 or $60,000. So that's been our strategy over the past like 9 months right now to send them to her people, because she's built a huge email list, and I'm like, send out our deals and see what happens. And they've started sticking. Okay. And what she does on a monthly basis, her educating them constantly on creative finance, how to evaluate a fix and flipper. She sends out the calculators and all. It makes them more comfortable to do deals with us.
Makes sense.
So educating them. And I see that's more of where I'd like to keep pushing things, because I just see that there's like such a niche there.
Yeah.
And I like it.
I love that, man.
Yeah,
I love that.
like
So her clients are like who exactly?
It's interesting. All her clients seem to have anywhere from like $100,000 to $200,000 a year in the bank.
Okay.
They all have a good W-2, and they just don't know how to get into real estate. That's like her avatar. They don't know anything about it. They're fascinated by it. They want to get into it, and they love the education, but they don't seem to know how to get deals. That's always the piece. And she teaches them, but then acquisitions is so hard.
It's very hard.
You know, she explains it to them.
That's the thing. It's a great thing to know, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's a job to do that. So you kind of got to educate people through the thing of, okay, well, now you have enough that you understand the basis of what this is and how it works.
Yep.
But do you really want to do that? And is it worth, if you have a couple $100,000 in the bank, you probably have a pretty damn good W-2.
Yep.
It's not worth trading your time that you're currently getting $50, $60, $70 an hour for to go do these tasks that you can pay somebody less, or just go pay a wholesaler or an agent or whatever, right?
You're right. And that was a lot of her educating along the way to them. And what we've seen is they're usually in three buckets. They want to do some fix and flips, they want to buy and hold real estate, or they want to just park their capital in something. And what I told my wife is the parking the capital part will come along the way when we come across something in the commercial space. So we've really looked at more getting into self-storage or commercial strip malls.
Okay.
Something like more, like when I say commercial strip mall, it would be something that is a little ran down, just like us, distressed seller, willing to do some seller finance, has a Chinese store that's been there for a while, maybe a dry cleaners, something of that scale where I'm not getting into trying to buying a CVS or anything that is obscure, you know, something really at that level. But those are really what I like to start looking into, because they really cash flow. Single family rentals, in my opinion, do not cash flow because there's so much maintenance. If you go after apartment complex, it's the same situation. There's just so much CapEx you need. You're really looking for the exit, not the in-between doesn't really exist. But there's equity.
Yeah, well, you in New Jersey are the only place worse than Delaware County taxes. So, that's a big aspect, right? It's like I talked to some guys that own rentals Midwest somewhere, and they're like, yeah, my property taxes are $800 a year. I'm like, mine are $800 a month, man. Like, are you kidding me?
It's amazing. But I think for us, it's the equity on the back end, and then the tax benefits. Yeah. That's the two components I look at as single family. Anything else, I don't even care about because I don't expect it. I don't expect it at this point in my career. So that I would never get rid of keeping single families if I love them or I like them, but I'm not buying in Paulsboroughs of the world or just crummy neighborhoods because of the headache, the turnover costs. It's not worth it.
It's a really hard way to generate active income. And the point you brought up earlier about, well, I can buy and I can refinance and pull some money out and everything. It's like, that was a thing for a
was.
while. It's like
Yeah.
now it's even harder to do that, right?
Yep.
You have to buy a smoking deal
Yep.
to be able to have any equity that you can pull out after a renovation or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to generate any active income if your entire business model is I'm buying rentals.
Yeah.
You know, it's really challenging.
And that's a great point, because when you're a real estate investor, you don't, I mean, I didn't understand the active income. So when you're just thinking the cash flow's coming in, you're like, all right, actually, I need another Shiloh that's going to give me some money here, because
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't have,
because
you
we're
know, I
looking
don't
at
have
it through
anything.
rose-colored glasses. We're like, well, this deal is going to make. I'm going to have $100,000 in equity.
Yep.
It's going to print $500 a month in cash flow.
Yeah.
Once stabilized.
Yeah.
And you know, over the course of me owning this thing for 20 years, dude, it's going to kick off $500,000. Like,
Yep.
let's go.
Yeah.
But it's not generating shit right now.
Yeah. And it's interesting, because I'm like a deal junkie. I feel like I'm obsessed. Like, people with cars, if I love a house, if I know it has the equity right away, it doesn't have the cash flow, but it's a great asset, I will keep it. It's hard though with rates. So like, my thoughts now is, do I just wholesale it, or do I really just bite the bullet and just keep it? So it's a little tougher now to make a decision with interest rates. The easiest way to hedge interest rate is just buying a duplex because then there's 2 doors, 3 doors, 4 doors to do it. But just buying one single property nowadays is not the same as years ago.
Yep.
It's not the same way.
Totally agree, man. And
Yeah.
all of my rentals except one
Yeah.
are multifamilies, duplexes, triplexes,
cool.
and quads.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, because I actually just posted something on social media this morning.
Yeah.
As far as your tenants, how is everything going with rent collection and everything? Because I bring that up because I got an alert that 11 out of our tenants, I think today is the 6th day of the month, right?
Yeah.
So late fees. So more than half of our tenants non-paying right now.
Wow. We had a huge issue. We just had a court order of a tenant leaving on Monday. My wife told me the other day, we're about $180,000 of unpaid rents from tenants this
That's
year.
huge.
So far. It's been massive.
huge.
Yeah. So we've evicted tons. I don't know the exact number, but my attorney has been in court. We spent a ton of attorney fees on it, got rid of people. And the tenants I've had were actually good tenants for years. So inflation's real for them.
Yep.
I've seen it. If the property doesn't have a big turnover, we will just put Section 8 in. So that I do have a portion of my portfolio that has Section 8. Pretty smooth. It's actually not bad. And the tenants that we vetted are good tenants. But the tenants that do pay, they've been an issue. They've been payment plans, late payers. So I don't know the exact number. I don't feel like it's 11. It might be like 4 to 5.
Okay.
Right now, where we're at with some
Got it.
people. Yeah.
Got it.
But we have them on payment plans. So they'll build in that $100 late fee, and they'll like split payments up. So we do have a lot of these unique payment plan structures right now.
Hey, yeah, it's a mess up economy, man. Like
Yeah.
everybody's feeling it and everything. Like
Yeah.
my thing that I always go to in my head that I feel like not enough landlords are talking about, because like you, I'm sure, you have a bunch of buddies that own hundreds of doors and everything. But something that I don't hear people talking about enough is like not the affordability of today and the inflation that everybody's experienced, but like even if everything continues on a similar trajectory, what's the landscape going to look like 2 years from now, right?
Yep.
Like people aren't making more money, and rent, we have to continue raising rent because our cost for everything is going up. But how will people that are barely able to afford rent today going to be able to afford 2 years from now?
I've heard Elon Musk say that there has to be a government stipend or subsidy to normal people. I don't know if I agree with it. From looking at rentals, just a simple example, if I have a rental today and I can't charge a normal tenant more, even though the market rent needs to go up, I'm getting screwed as a landlord because taxes are definitely going up, guaranteed every year, and insurance is hell of a lot guaranteed.
Oh my God, like crazy.
So the landlord's getting squeezed worse than anybody in the whole equation. And when government gets involved, they're not thinking about all these variables unless they make the affordable housing massively. Say they go Section 8 and they give you a big rent increase, then you're basically pushing out people that don't have Section 8.
That's right.
So they have a whole mess.
It's an issue,
from a
man.
housing situation on their hands.
Yep.
And if people can't afford to pay you regular rent, they're competing with the government. So there's a huge conflict of interest between the two, but they don't see far down the line on the housing problem.
For sure.
alone. Yeah.
For sure.
So unless we do tiny houses, I mean, or renting rooms. I know in California, that's huge. People rent rooms because it's just so expensive there.
Yep.
ADUs, it's common in Europe. So that would have to be in play. In Jersey, not common, not really. You can't. They
Well,
don't.
it's illegal, right?
It's illegal.
like,
you can't do it. Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. Like, I can't think of a better way to make housing affordable, especially for a single person, right? Like, if I'm a single dude in my 30s, like, I don't really want to go rent, certainly not a 3-bedroom apartment.
No.
Like, I don't even really need a 1-bedroom apartment. A room is fine for me, right? But nobody can do that.
When I lived in Center City, I had 2 roommates, and like I said, I don't know if it's illegal, but it's common in Philly where it'll be 3 young professionals. They live together. They each take a room. They split the rent. It's easy for each of us. It did not hurt our bank account, and I actually didn't really leave my room much. Like, so I was just very I liked it that way.
Yep.
That would, I think, help a little bit towards the affordability thing.
issue.
But the family thing would be tough. You have 2 kids, and how do you make that work out?
You couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't make it work.
But
in
single
that
guys, they
capacity.
don't care. We'll live in a shoebox. It's
100%, dude. Yep. Simple.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, because Jersey has some pretty tough eviction laws, right?
Yes.
How do you navigate that?
Well, my wife is an expert on the laws. I mean, between ChatGPT, her, and our attorney,
I love it.
Yeah, they really go like guns blazing into the office, into the courtroom. Each county in Jersey is different that we've noticed. Like Camden County, Gloucester County, Salem County, and there's Cumberland County. Whatever county you're in, there's a timeline of how quickly they move, if they slow things down, if they move things forward. I've seen Camden County. I went to personally to 2 this year, and I like how they try to hash it out with a mediator. Depending on the mediator that you have, it can move quickly or it can't move quickly. Gloucester County, I haven't sat in those courtrooms, but it seems like it's a slower process.
Got it.
Which is surprising because Camden County is a bigger county than Gloucester County. Cumberland County, I've noticed, is they move things along quicker. They're a little bit more stern with, taking the landlord side. And that's what I've noticed down there. But
Got it.
It's county by county. How it is in Jersey. Yeah. And that's primarily where my holdings are, right there. But yeah, I think your attorney has to be very strong, a pit bull. Like my attorney's he comes in very, very strong. He understands landlord tenant. You can't hire an attorney that has no idea about being a landlord, the eviction process, to even get you in a good position to.
And by the way, you have to hire an attorney. Like you can't try to do the eviction yourself, even if you wanted to.
If it's an LLC in Jersey, you have to hire an attorney.
If you own the asset as an LLC, you have to. Okay, got it.
And if it was individually owned, I can go represent myself. Yeah. I'd rather represent myself to save the fees, but I can't in some of those situations. But it's also time. So it's like,
of course,
it's like, it's annoying if you got to go. And some situations are different than others where you really need to get somebody out. For example, like I have a subject to deal that the note is due with the seller. And this person's been a problem because I tried to do a wrap with them, have them buy it as a rent to own and cash them out. And they just didn't live up to their part. So that was a situation where it was a little trickier. And I was like, I have to go and get this thing handled with the mediator. And we did. So I think it's case by case where I'll go to the courthouse to handle those situations.
Yeah, something like that. It's any sort of creative finance deal is, well, creative.
Yeah, they are creative.
So, because I went to your website. So did you used to do like a lot of rent to own stuff, or do you still do some of that? Or
it's funny, we pivoted on that. We did it and it worked for a period of time. And what happened was that them cashing us in was very challenging. Like at first they were approved, they were ready to go. We helped them get on the right track to do it. And it either pushed out too late or they they're just not responsible enough at some point where they couldn't get it executed. I actually have one right now in Trainer PA where great rent to own. Lady gave us a nice down payment. There's a nice spread between the rent and the mortgage we have. It's been a struggle to get her approved. So we're giving her an extension to get her approved. So we're going to get her cashed out at some point. But it's not as smooth as I was sold in the past from just going to trainings and things. And I'd rather not do the rent to own because it is a little arduous of a process.
Got it.
Doing it. Yeah.
So what is the real risk though? Like if going into a deal like that, somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I want to do rent to own. I'm assuming you're setting up a projected timeline, right?
Yep.
Like, oh yeah, in 2 years we'll get you approved. Like what's the normal timeline anyway?
Yeah, so it depends on the loan size. So if I'm doing, let's say a 3-year sub-2 where the seller's getting cashed out, I'll try to get them cashed out in a year.
Got it.
And we'll pre-qualify them to verify with our lender, hey, can we get them approved? Generally, they're good. They can get it done. If they're not in that bucket, we just can't do it. They have a bankruptcy that's lingering. That's the situation. If we do get them qualified, what we'll do is we'll take them through the process of, okay, we need to draw up a regular lease agreement and then a lease purchase agreement. Because there has to be 2 agreements in place. Before, we only did a lease purchase agreement. But if you have to evict them, you need a lease agreement too. As a tenant as well. So it's like a lease purchase and then a landlord-tenant agreement that we've done. So we've had to have 2 agreements in Jersey.
Got it.
So, yeah. In PA, my PA attorney told me it's easier to just hash this out before going to court because it's a little longer. I don't know how Delco is. I think Trainer's in Delco, right?
That's Delco.
I don't know the whole process. He just said, he's like, I think it's better to just handle it with the rent-to-own tenant to get them situated to get out.
Got it.
Yeah, but I do see instead of renting to own, when we get the deal at the right price, if it's subject to, we just keep it right away, or we'll wholesale it. We'll wholesale it to like one of my wife's students because the deal makes sense and they can just pay assignment fee and they get it at a great rate.
To the point that you made earlier, man, it's like so many things are forgiven by just buying the deal at the right price.
Exactly.
It gives you options.
It does.
Right? It's like, yeah, I can rent it, I can flip it, I can wholesale it, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Acquisition is the most important part.
And that was a part that I think a lot of people overlook is how important acquisition is. Because you're always scrambling, like, where do I get deals? Where do I get deals? It all starts with acquisition. Yep. And if you're relying on an agent, I mean, they could be an arm of your acquisition, but what else are you doing to get a deal? It's just you have to have that component to be successful now.
Yep.
You have
Fully agree.
Yeah.
So what are some of the strategies that you have in place now? I know you said you were doing some of the Mojo stuff with cold calling.
Yep.
Is that still like in a tool in your arsenal, or have you pivoted a little bit?
Yeah, so we have one VA who does call on Mojo to this day. It might be, I guess, archaic to people that use it, but it works for us. It's always worked. We pick up deals. It makes sense. So we use Mojo. We use PPL, so we pay per lead. So we have a flat rate with a vendor who just sends us leads. Works out great. That's actually one of our best channels. We use mailers. The one thing about mailers is I need to, it's been an influx. I can't figure out mailers. Like I love them, but then I'm like, why is it not converting on some deals?
Oh, let's talk about it, man.
Right,
I'm a mail guy. Let's go.
Because I do love mailers. But I feel that if I don't like somehow keep the deal together in some way, shape, or form, that entire marketing expense went to crap.
I totally understand.
You know?
Yep.
And they're little, I don't know if it's just the batch I'm getting of the people, or it's the actual data I'm pulling.
That's the hardest part, man. Is like, you have to have a big enough sample size to make any sort of somewhat conclusive decisions about anything, right?
Yeah.
So like everything that I ever did with big batches of mail, I sent so many postcards, man. I've sent like 1 million of those postcards that everybody hates, the third notice postcards. Dude, I sent 1 million of them, and I hate that campaign. I hated the leads we generated from that campaign. But what I loved about it was it was really repeatable, you know?
Yeah.
So I had a large enough data set that I'm able
Smart.
to, and plus from doing that, it's like, that was a way to essentially validate mail lists too when I'm sending.
Yeah.
And a postcard is a lot cheaper to send than a letter.
Yep.
So for anything that doesn't bounce as returned mail, which
Yeah.
usually we would end up with like 10% returned, which is kind of massive.
Yeah.
And we were validating all our lists before sending.
What's
you
your
know?
typical response rate? Is it 1-2%?
Depends. So for that postcard campaign specifically, it was higher. It varied county by county.
Okay.
We tracked it really deep.
Yeah.
But I would say around 4%.
That's pretty damn good.
It was huge, but
Yeah.
that's the thing. A lot of leads from that campaign are calling, just telling us to fuck off.
Yeah, yeah.
That they're
It's
going
not
to
a
come
quality.
find us and burn the building down. Like crazy, crazy people, you know?
Yeah.
So if you reverse engineer all that out, it's probably
Yeah.
closer to
Now,
1%.
the one thing, I use REI print mail, and they're big with the checks.
Yep, I
And
do the check campaign. Yep.
the checks are cool. What we do is, if we switch it up, I've noticed it does work more effectively than just, we were pounding the checks so repetitively. I feel like when it goes to the mailbox, they're just tossing it right in the trash can.
Yep.
And there has to be this, the constant shifting of your marketing from a mailer standpoint.
Fully agree. And
Yeah.
that's the thing too. I feel like the check thing, if you're doing it and I'm doing it and
Yep.
we're talking about, everybody else is going to do it too.
Yeah.
So it's like, you kind of do just
Yeah.
become just like everybody else. So you have to switch
Yeah.
things up.
I have a love-hate relationship with mailers. I love mailers. It's just, I think our cost per lead used to be cheaper. I think we're around like $4,500 per lead. I don't know if that's
Yeah, no,
somewhere
we're in
around
that
you.
ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, so $4,500. But you can get some sweet deals from mailers. I can't complain. I just think we have to do a bunch of channels, test them out, see what works.
Yep.
PPC, we've tested a different company out. Has worked, hasn't worked. So there's the consistency thing. We're always trying to strive to get consistent, across the board. But I guess if you're diversifying, there's more consistency.
Yes and no. And I think that's one of the frustrating parts that
Yeah.
I can totally level with you on. It's like, right?
Yeah.
Like we do a campaign, mailers, right? The different mailer campaigns, you do them for a long time. You have a lot of data to support
Yep.
what you're doing and the way that you're doing it. And then things change. Sometimes things change and it's not even quantifiable what changed or why.
Yes.
So you start to make little tweaks and pivots.
Yeah.
And that led me to this campaign over here. And that led me to this PPC guy because I heard that he had good results, a good track record and everything.
Yeah.
Let me try that,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like we were talking before we started, marketing is just a fancy word for testing shit. So testing.
Putting money, lighting it on fire at times. And if you're not willing to do it, then you're going to get eliminated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I will always stay committed to channels, but I will definitely always test another channel out. Like we both tried TV. It worked for a period and then it just completely fell on its face.
How long did it work for you?
I did
Seemingly
it
work.
for about 7 months.
Okay.
And the last 3 were just hurting me because
Really?
the check I was writing, the conversion wasn't coming in time, and it's a big,
Fully get it,
it's
man.
a big check to write.
Yeah.
And, but in the beginning, I'd say the first 3 months were pretty solid. Maybe I should have did a different commercial to tweak it or have a wrinkle. Did you do anything like that?
I did.
Did it
And
help?
That fell off even more.
Oh, wow.
That was that was kind of the downfall of the campaign. It was
Interesting.
probably, I ran it for 13 or 14 months.
Yeah.
And maybe after 10 months, I was like, and by the way, it was always from day one, it was our worst return on ad spend
Yep.
campaign that we did. But it was consistent and they were high quality leads. So we averaged around a 3x ROAS
Yeah.
on it throughout the entire campaign. But when you're spending 20 G's a month, it's like,
Yeah.
whew,
Yeah.
Like, well, we better bring 60 in because if not, if that was our only campaign, it'd be real close to a break even as far as profitability for the company, right?
Yeah.
But after about 10 months or so, that started ticking downwards, So
Yeah.
I had the same thought. I'm like, okay, well, it's been the same commercial, just my ugly mug on there for 10 months. People are probably bored of it. They're numb to it.
Yep.
Let's change it up.
Yeah.
And I had the brilliant idea of putting my wife and kids on it. Actually, funny,
I love that.
funny note of that. My son was, how long ago was it? Yeah, it was my son.
Yeah.
He was like a newborn. he took a crap while we were recording the commercial. So he was on TV, like in his first 6 months of life, taking a poop on TV. So
that'll be a forever memory. That's what's up. That's cool.
my boy, man. But after we did that, it's like we always averaged between 40 and 50 leads a month from that campaign. And after we filmed the new commercial, dude, it dropped to like 15 to 20 leads a month. And I'm like, what is going on? So after running for another 4 months with the new commercial, because I wanted to see, you got to give every marketing channel a shot once you make a change. It just kept ticking downward and downward. So I pulled the plug, and I was actually talking to Phil Vaughn about it after the fact.
Yeah.
And he was like, Drew, are you serious? You can't figure out like why your new commercial like bombed? I'm like, no, man. Like, what are you trying to say? Like, I think I'm a pretty smart dude. No, I can't figure it out. It worked for a while, and then it didn't, and we switched to commercial, and it was even worse. It's like, dude, think about like your seller demographic and your seller profile. Most of the people that you told me that you're doing deals with are in Philadelphia. They're inner city families and everything. He's like, do you think that your family with your wife with blonde hair and blue eyes and your kids with blonde hair and blue eyes relate to black families in Philly? And I'm like, dude, I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Never even thought of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
I was like, holy crap.
Yeah. Like a happy family, your demographics, they're not, it's not relatable.
It's not the same. It's not relatable.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier, like you want whoever you're working with, whoever you're buying a product from, whoever you're selling something to be relatable.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's a very
Never
good
thought
point.
of it.
Yeah, I know.
But there you go. It goes back to having people around you that are intelligent and they've done things and they have insights and wisdom that they're willing to share with you. That's huge.
Would you ever go back to TV at some point?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say never.
Yeah.
But
same.
The market conditions would have to be different than they are today. You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
Because it's a big check to write.
Yeah, it is. I can see it working. It depends solely. I think conditions are important. Timing, like does the timing make sense in the seasons? I think seasons, in my theory, we have slow months, we have good months, and where are you putting the TV ad at the right time? Like if you're running them in Philadelphia, are people going down the shore? Is your demographic going to be there? Are they going to be around at that specific window of time? So there's definitely like more things behind, I think, TV than just meets the eye.
Totally agree.
You know what I mean?
I mean, when I was running it, one of the reasons that I kept it, even though it was our worst return on ad spend campaign, was the other benefits to it, right? And one of the biggest is credibility. You know, like you're talking with a seller, hey, by the way, have you seen our commercial? Even if they haven't, that's like, oh, well, this guy must be legit.
Absolutely. That pretty much solidifies your closing rate's pretty high if it's an opportunity because of the power of this is a real brand, this is credibility. Oh my God, the owner actually got on the phone with me. Yeah, to talk to me. Yeah, it's a big component. I'm with you on that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So you've tested a little bit of everything, just like all of us.
Everything but radio. Done everything but radio.
All right. Yeah, I have not done radio either.
I've heard just bad things about radio, so I was like, I'll stay away. But everything else has worked for the most part for me.
It's just the question of to what degree. Right?
Exactly. But PPL for me is the most competitive for me, but it has been the highest return on investment. Absolutely the highest ROI for me.
I love it.
Over the past year. It absolutely has been.
I love that.
And I'd say mailers have been in second place. PPC probably like around 3. And PPC, that's one of those, I can't figure it out. So,
Yeah, I burn a lot of money on PPC.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of people say the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny to that point, right? Like when I first tested PPC, I did it myself, self-managed maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I may have spent like $2,000 in ad spend, and I think I did a deal or two. It's like, okay, that was pretty good. But I had other things going on. I had other campaigns going on. I didn't really have the time to lean into it. So I kind of just pulled the plug, Some years passed. I was introduced to some of the best PPC companies in the country.
We know them probably.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I have buddies that have used some of the same companies and said the same thing. It's like the one I used specifically, I spent like $30,000 with over the course of maybe 4 or 5 months. I didn't close a single deal.
That's a sad.
It's tough, man. It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. Yeah.
But
Yeah, I use the same company you're talking about. We closed a deal, maybe maybe two, but we broke even. So I was like, we broke even. We got out of it.
That's a win. Yep.
And but yeah, they that's the same thing. They go into these masterminds and they sell you these big results, and then you get them, and you're willing to try it. You try anything.
Yep.
And that's the one thing that you're always trying to figure out, like what works and what doesn't work.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. So through the journey you've been on, reverse that question on you. Would you ever go back and do construction again in any capacity?
I would. I'd stay away from construction. We have a very good setup right now with our contractors. My wife has a great relationship with him. He's from El Salvador. It's like the turnkeyest thing. We just give him a property. He gives us a price. He does the labor, materials. He does pretty much everything but the HVAC, and it's done. And I actually think it's easier of a business than acquisitions because I don't have to worry about the guy. It's surprising. Like, it's the one piece that I don't worry about. That I know if we're doing 3 fix and flips now, I know they're getting done. I can't explain it. They're great guys. They're great at what they do.
That's fantastic.
So I would rather just trust somebody I can trust and do it that way. But yeah, I would definitely not want to own a construction company because I have zero experience in the arena.
Not zero. You have some.
I have some.
You have more than most.
Yeah. But to run the thing.
Yeah.
Is you have to have a certain way to talk to guys and relate to them a little bit differently. I came in, I don't think they could relate to me to that level, and I was leaning on one guy who could, and he wasn't the right guy.
I fully understand.
Yep,
that's tough, man.
Yeah,
it's really tough.
Yeah.
What have you learned about being a leader or a manager throughout all of this?
Oh man, being a leader, it's continually growing, having I think daily conversations with your people. Like, you have to communicate with your people on a daily basis. I've learned from just my mentors of giving some type of wisdom or nugget that you can pass on daily. Like I make it very intentional.
I love that.
To share something that I know. Hopefully it sticks where it gets delegated down the road. And even my acquisitions guy, I constantly give them. I ask them questions to say, like, well, how would you do this? What would you think through it? And then, like, today, one guy's like, I think I just close more deals when you're around. I'm like, why do you think that? It's just in your mind. You're more than capable of doing it.
That's right.
And I think sometimes these guys, they use it as maybe a crutch, or they feel that there's a need that you need to be around, but really they can fly on their own without you. And so I always try to give them reinforcement, try to give them a little bit of nuggets. And I listen to a bunch of stuff or audio books, and I really just take it and share it with my words, because I'm listening to a bunch of stuff, but I don't think none of these guys are that into it like we are. And I like to pass it on.
Dude,
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what is, you've talked a lot about mentors and masterminds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, what is your thought process around that?
My thought process is I love it if it's relatable to you. And I guess when I hear them speaking, are they coming from a place of where I was and where I want to go? Like my one mentor specifically is Mark Evans, and I'm in his group, and he's just kind of done the whole wholesaling thing. He was like one of the trailblazers in Ohio, and he's had so many iterations in his journey now where he's just a very successful business guy, private lender, just does a lot of things like in a big picture. And I just love the way he can share, like if you ask him questions, he basically tells you like you're asking the wrong question. Like you got to ask a better question, or this question doesn't apply to what you're actually looking for. And it's more of the right questions to get the right results, or the right things that you're seeking. So he's been very good at instrumental of like me really finding out like what I want in the business and how to lead people correctly. So he's been great. He's actually a phenomenal mentor. And then the one thing with the boardroom has been great. We're just seeing people on a large scale from real estate, just real estate only, what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, and how they lead their people in real estate. So I like the two sides of like the business side and then the wholesaling side.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thinking through that with the question that you said that you often ask your mentor, And he kind of reframes it to you as you're asking the wrong question,
Yep.
and you got to go deeper into that.
Yeah.
So like, what is the right question like for yourself, you know?
Yeah, I guess the right question would be, there was a period of time, the right question for me is like, what do you want to accomplish from all of this? And where do you plan on taking it? Like, what's the avenue that it goes down? And that was like always a piece of what I was looking for. And I was just, I think, spinning my wheels in wholesaling because I'm like, you know what, I just want to do fix and flips and own real estate. But ultimately, that's not really what I want to do. I actually don't want to be in that business full time. I'd rather be more, have real estate, but be more of just managing a business or being involved in a business that I could see grow. Like I don't want to get into the real estate, pounding it every day and eventually exiting it. That's like the plan. But I see my wife's education business being something that in the next year will be pretty substantial. I could see it.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
really cool. So
Yeah.
what drives her to do that?
It's the impact. Like I see it when she walks in a room. This is the thing when I could tell someone's like an amazing presence. Like they light up a room. She walks in a room and the way they're just magnets towards her, and there's hope and there's like life. I'm like, there's something here. I tell her that. I was like, there's something special. I was like, I can't tell you. If I get in front of a room, I don't get the same lights in people's eyeballs as you do. And you're just sitting on something different that's unique. And I said, the person in the front of the room generally makes the most money. I said, you're always in the front of the room. You're always delivering the message. And it's so impactful that there's people, like there's a lady that will fly in. It's crazy, dude. You'll see her last mastermind, 2 people flew in from Tampa for a 2-hour meetup.
Wow.
Just to come
For
in.
2 hours.
2 hours. She had an event a year ago. Guy flew in from California. It was a 3-hour, just like a one-day training. Like she has people all over the country.
That's incredible.
She only had 1,000 followers. I'm like, you don't even have a lot of followers.
That's incredible.
And you got these people coming in. I'm like, I could have 5,000 followers. I'm not getting a guy from California flying. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's where I was thinking this could be something big because there's just nothing out there. And I ask other people in different markets, they're like, dude, there is nothing in the Spanish community that offers this level of education.
Yeah.
And I'm just very passionate about it because I see the trajectory of it, and she's passionate about it. She loves it, and I like seeing her on stage. It actually makes me excited to see how
I totally
she's
understand.
doing. You know
man.
what I mean? Yeah.
Dude, I say all the time, like, I could be having a conversation with somebody that does, you know, they could be a janitor. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But when you see somebody that just kind of like bubbles up about whatever it is that they're talking about,
Yeah.
that fires me up. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. I could know nothing about the
Yep.
topic that they're talking about.
Yeah.
But it literally energizes me seeing somebody that is incredibly passionate about what it is that they're doing or talking about or, you know,
I'm with
a
you.
part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. I love to see people that she will. I just feel most people they're in things the wrong reason. She has such a good heart. She like wears it on her sleeve with them, and all she wants to do is help them. And I know that it's coming from a good place. So you're only going to grow when it always comes from a good place. And
That's awesome.
That's what it's about, dude. You know,
That's winning.
Yeah,
That is winning.
And I love too is she's in masterminds with me, and she sees a different side of business that her audience doesn't see. So I'm like, you have such a leg up on everybody because they're just not, they don't invest in themselves like you. So you're always
right.
going to be 100 steps down the road that you're like, you're going to be crushing it.
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right. And you're able to just relay that information
Yeah.
to the people that are around you or your customers, your clients, whatever. Like you said, employees, you know, even taking something from a book that I just read and I just learned and just regurging that
Yeah.
information because that person probably otherwise wouldn't have
Yeah.
picked up that book.
Yep.
They wouldn't have went to the $10,000 mastermind
Yep.
thing that you went to, you know,
Even
so
the-
being able to share.
Even the event you had here, I came and you shared the link of that CG clip, and dude, that was gold. I mean, but you had to invest to go,
Right.
But also you passed it down by just being a giver. That type of information was phenomenal information
Yep.
that you shared to me, and you could pass it on to your team, and those things are invaluable to me.
Love it,
you know,
man.
that's great. Yeah.
Love it. So what do you think about the current state of the economy and everything that's happening? Yesterday, I know the stock market, I don't really follow it at all, other than the fact that I see everybody talking about it and everything. And everybody's kind of been waving the flag that a crash is imminent, it's around the corner. What's your 2 cents?
I feel it is a perfect setup for the Fed to drop rates, to try to do something different, shake it up. Real estate has a huge issue because there's shortages and builders don't want to build in some capacity because there's not enough supply. The price points, if you're building,
it's tough to
$500,000 over, you can't afford it. They're jammed up.
Yep.
And I think houses, I know their houses are sitting on market for new construction for a while over that price point. And there has to be a shake, but I feel that us holding real estate, they're only going to appreciate, in my opinion. And I like Section 8 because the money always comes in. I never have to worry about that. So that's an advantage by being in real estate. I think private lenders in real estate are actually going to make out big in this thing because they see that if people are hiding and scared, real estate's not really going to go around. They're still lending out money left and right. I mean, my private lenders are willing to deploy capital. It's more expensive, but they are not scared by what's going on. And I kind of like to see where their heads are at. If they're pulling back,
of course,
not hard money lenders, but private
keeping
lenders.
a pulse.
Yeah. They have a very good pulse. Like if they're leveraging their equity from a bank to relend it, because that's a lot of the guys I deal with, they have a very good pulse on where their money's going, if it's worth it, because they might pull back the reins from them, these banks, and say, listen, you can't borrow as much equity as you wanted to. So they have a pretty good sense of what's going on. So I see what they're doing, and they're lending more money out. They're actually asking me, hey, you have more deals to fund. So in my opinion, if they're not scared, I'm not scared, but there's a lot that's going to go on with the election and
of course
what pans out. And, you know, business is important. That's a huge focus of the economy. Like it cannot be missed, period.
Man, obviously I am not incredibly educated on many other types of investment categories and classes, but at the end of the day, just looking back at history, like if real estate gets impacted massively, guess what? Everything else is too.
Yep.
So that's why private investors are still ready to deploy money into real estate, because if real estate's going to, everything else is probably being affected the same or more anyway. So
it's funny. I see this though. People are still going down the shore. They're still spending $9 on a slice of pizza down in Ocean City.
Yep.
But I don't know where all the money's going. Like, how do they have money to afford all this? There's something. I don't know if there's just credit cards are being over leveraged by just the middle class, but the middle class and the lower class, I just don't understand how they're able to get through these things. And I feel they're kicking the can and they're just not paying, you know, if they're a regular tenant, not paying the landlords or paying them late to enjoy the summer because of the season. And then their thought is to catch up. But there's some things going on. There's some problems in that part.
Man.
Yeah.
For sure. We're going to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, you know, like one of the things that I kind of preached to my team ever since COVID, because even at COVID, it's like in hindsight, looking back, it's like we did really well in that time period, but there was a lot of uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people that we hired and brought in came from other companies that kind of closed up shop and everything. So there was a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And the way that I tried to preach to everybody that, hey, look, regardless of what happens, it doesn't really matter in the acquisition space. I don't even want to say wholesale, but in the acquisition space, it doesn't really matter if the market is up or down or left or right. There's always going to be distressed sellers, and there's always going to be buyers. There's always going to be people that want to deploy money into a real estate deal in some way, shape, or form, whether that's them buying a wholesale deal that you have or them investing in your deal when you're acquiring it. Like the only thing that's going to change is the dynamics in the structure. The seller profile may change. The motivators of them wanting to sell or do something with you may change. And the pricing is going to change, but it's going to change on the other end also. Right? So yes, everything about it might change, but the fundamentals of what we do and finding a seller that has a problem and solving that and finding a buyer that needs to buy a deal, buy an asset, it's all still going to exist.
You're right. Buying and selling will always exist. You know, whatever market it is, if it's up, down, sideways, you have to buy and sell something. It doesn't matter if it's real estate, it could be a car, it could be anything. You know, produce wholesalers. I mean, every industry, there's an exchange. It's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. So it's just one of the classes of an exchange.
I was just talking to a guy the other week on the podcast that he was flipping houses during the 08, 09 crash and everything. And I was expecting him to get to the point of being like, yeah, man, I got crushed, I got demolished, and I lost everything. No, he continued flipping all through, and he's like, I did fine. I did okay because everybody else stopped. People still needed to buy houses. So if I could make the house still affordable, but the nicest affordable house of the few that were available, I sold them.
And you know what he did? He probably made certain adjustments to his buy box, his criteria. He went maybe to a lower price point because he knew first-time home buyers could get approved versus going luxury or over, you know, a certain number. But there's always an adjustment you make, and he'll be there because there's definitely buyers. And there's always obviously sellers. So
we're making that pivot right now, man. Like a lot of the rehabs that I used to do. You know, I wanted to have the highest end finishes. Like you said, I wanted to be able to share that highlight reel on social media and be like, look what I built, you know? And now it's like one of the last flips that I did, dude, we spent $18,000 there. We did paint, carpet, flooring.
Those are my favorite.
Didn't change the cabinets, didn't change the countertops. Like, we're trying to be in the median price point, but right at the upper threshold of that. We're not trying to be the nicest house on the block. We're trying to be that middle of the road.
I think when you try to get sexy with all your houses, you get jammed up. Like I used to be that guy. It doesn't make sense. I agree. I like to give them a little bit of equity where their agent can say, you know what, you're getting it at a good price point.
A deal.
Paint, carpet, they price it accordingly. This is a good deal, you know, and I think that's what sells it. And sometimes they go over asking, but I do the same strategy. I don't care if I could just make it clean, nice, a good presentation. In this market, they sell. They sell.
I love it, man. I love it.
Good strategy.
If you could go back 10 years, what would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now?
10 years. I would immediately have seeked out people that have trailblazed what I'm trying to get into before and ask them questions before I lose as much time and money and potential gray hairs that I have by not finding out what I'm getting myself into. Because don't get me wrong, I still have done very well, but there's just a lack of corners that you don't know that you're turning down. And if you're prepared for it, you're like, oh, I know that this is going to happen. I know that this is the right checklist I should have.
Preparation
for a home inspection or what, you know, CO inspection, things of that nature. But yeah, just being more prepared because I didn't. And then when I got into getting into like having coaches, I understood the value of it, but I didn't know where to find them. And I was a little late to saying, you know what, I didn't know there was really a space out here that existed. And I would have totally invested earlier into a coach that has been in the same situation as me, or even a local guy that's doing very well, like at a RIA, that you can just simply like pick their brain. They're generally people that do well, like to help people that are starting out. And that would be the best thing I'd say if I turned the clock back.
I love that. And it's so interesting because so many people, especially in the real estate space, almost like look down their nose at you for spending money on mentors or coaching and masterminds. They're like, oh, you can get everything for free. You can go watch a YouTube video. There's a book on that. It's like, it's different, man. I can't even, and that's the thing. I can't quantify the ROI that I've gotten from coaches and mentoring and masterminds in the past. I can tell you I spent a lot of money on them, but I can't tell you what the ROI is.
Yeah, so I would say with the whole mentoring thing, I don't know if you feel this way. When I leave an event, I feel like not only did I learn a lot, I'm coming back to the marketplace way more competitive. I have an edge over everybody, and you're fired up. There's just so much momentum that carries you over that nobody else has unless they do the same exact thing.
That's right.
And it's already giving you that one step ahead.
That's right.
You know, and we're doers. So you're going to take what you gathered and you're going to put it in place, and you're already going to be 5-6 times better off than you were before. And that's what I've noticed too.
I fully agree. And I think a piece of it is probably you have to swallow your pride a little bit to be able to say, I don't know everything.
Yep.
Right? I need somebody to help me with this issue that I'm dealing with. I don't know how to get past this financial issue, through this cash flow thing, through this employee issue that I'm dealing with. Like one of the mentors that I hired was for a specific issue. It was like 2 years ago, I was having some employee issues and basically like just some cultural issues in the company.
Yeah.
And man, I was ready to blow the whole fucking thing up. I was like, I'm either going to rip my hair out or I'm just going to shut the whole thing down.
Yeah.
And instead, I found a coach that was able to kind of talk me through those things that had dealt with those growth issues before and everything. And it worked.
Yeah.
I ended up not blowing up the company. I ended up removing some people from the company.
Yeah.
But had I not had that guidance, yeah, man, undoubtedly I would have blew up the whole company.
Yeah. And you know what? Even from a place of not even spending as much money, I've been on apps that I found people that are older, wiser, that ran organizations like you're saying, that they don't, I guess, know the marketplace of how expensive their coaching is. And I spent like as little as like $80 for 30 minutes of their time.
Wow.
And I'm just taking notes the whole time. I'm like, this person ran a serious business. And there's just a wealth of knowledge some people are willing to give away. Because some people are just retired and they just want to give back.
And they love it. Yep.
And it's not even about the money, but there's a lot of places and applications that you can use to get just wisdom.
Yep.
And it's amazing. You're right. I mean, there's a lot of outlets to get people that have done it and willing to help you out.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Where can people find you on social media?
So I'm pretty active on Instagram. It's my name, Mario Lancioni. I post a little bit on Facebook, but I seem to like Instagram a little bit more, so I do Instagram, and so that's my thing. You can find me on there.
Fair enough. I love it, man.
Yeah.
I think this was an awesome conversation, and just seeing your journey through everything and sharing everything and the ups and downs. And I want to thank you. I really do appreciate that, man, because you know, so many people just want to paint the highlight reel and not talk about the times that were tough.
Yeah.
So being able to be open and vulnerable about that is freaking massive. Like I've had so many failures and I openly talk about all of them. You know, it's like, it is what it is. It's a part of the journey.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate that. And obviously
welcome,
you're a wealth of information.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what comes next for you, brother.
Yeah, same thing, brother. You too.
Appreciate you,
Yeah,
man.
man.